Economic Development Week has been going on for a number of years now, and it is sponsored by our friends at the International Economic Development Council. And as Dan mentioned, we have some really amazing content that we're putting together. Stephen Jast is going to be joining us from Gazelle AI talking about technology and economic development. We're working on getting a site selector to come and join us to talk about what site selectors really look for. But the one that I'm really super excited about is Jeff Finkel from IEDC. Will be joining us on Friday, May 14th at 3 p.m. So mark your calendars now to talk about putting the I in IEDC. When he found out that we have people from all over North America joining us for conversations, he definitely wanted to be a part of Clubhouse and a part of our network. So he's going to be joining us May 14th, 3 o'clock, putting the I in IEDC.
That's great, Lara. And on Monday, we're hoping to bring another group in from Clubhouse that are part of our community builder friends. I haven't had a chance to contact them yet. And we're going to do a Tech Tuesday. And I think we're doing BIPOC one day. So, yeah, we're really going to have a diverse week, which is really great. Bob, I have started the recording. Maybe you want to kick off and set the room, and we'll get our session underway. Thanks, everybody.
I would love that. Thank you. And yes, thanks everyone for joining us today. Dan and I founded this, and then Laura kindly agreed to join us here as well. But we founded this community to start creating some best practices, quite frankly, some rob and duplicate opportunities of how we can learn from each other in the economic development communities that we operate in. So I just want to set the room, as Dan had mentioned. My name is Bob Minhas. I work with economic development teams to help them build local knowledge economies. And this session is being recorded. We've said it a couple times. We just want to make sure you guys are aware. The theme today, the topic that we're going to talk about, is really branding and understanding about branding in a community sense. How you really create something that gets those outside of your community eager to learn more about you. If you haven't yet, take a look at the stage, all the speakers you see on stage. I'm going to mostly talk about Laura and Dan, but they're amazing knowledge givers. Be sure to follow them. You want to make sure you follow them because there are other rooms that we host, and of course there are other rooms we participate in, and we want to be able to invite you to those rooms as well. If you think this topic is a super interesting one for any friends or colleagues, please feel free to use the plus button on the bottom there and invite some friends and family if you want to have a great discussion over the dinner table. Now, just some advice. If you have some questions here and you're in the audience, if you actually hit the hand icon with the notepad button on the bottom, that will raise your hand, and that'll allow myself, Dan, or Lara to invite you on stage to share what you want to share. Keep in mind, when you do come on stage, your mic is going to be on or hot, so as soon as you jump on, you may want to hit the mute button right away. And as you join us on stage, a couple of best practices we've been working on, which seem to work really well. Number one, when you hear something you really like on stage, please feel free to turn your mic on and off. That creates a clapping sensation so that you're really agreeing with what's on stage. When you're sharing, feel free to say, "I'm done speaking," and just regurgitate your name, so that lets us know that the next speaker can continue on from that point as well. That's all I had to share, Dan. Let's see if we could throw it back to you. And how should we start the conversation today? Can I ask some questions as usual, or is there a topic you want to start with?
Yeah, Bob. You know what? I think you should. I have a fun topic I want to share, but I don't want to kick off the show with that. So, yeah, why don't you get us started as usual, Bob? You do such a great job getting the conversation going, and we'll see how it flows.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. So, my big question when it comes to understanding branding communities is, I think the biggest gap I find is it seems that it's a process that's done at a very high administrative level. And here's what I mean. A lot of times we'll see communities and towns and cities rebrand, and there's a lot of pushback from their community. I remember there was a time about 5 years ago when I participated with a small rural community who actually engaged their citizens in the rebrand. And what they did was they created a small event well before COVID and had sort of an artist come in and really listen to what people were saying, what they felt their town or their community was. And this artist, for lack of a better word, created sort of an animated collage right there. And that sort of lent itself to the consultants and to the stakeholders to really think about the branding process well before they sort of started the process. My question here to you guys is, what are your thoughts about engaging citizens in the branding process of the community they reside in? So Dan, can I start with you, because again, I'm a big, you know me in Innisfil. I know Innisfil's done such a really, really great job at branding themselves. So I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I'm probably the wrong guy to ask because as you know, I don't ask for permission, and I lead with that authority. So I here's what I'll share. So in and we'll come back to Innisfil in a little bit. Well, actually, you know what? I'll start with Innisfil. So we struggled a little bit with our economic development branding on Innisfil because it's such a diverse kind of. It's this rural agricultural area. There's the Lake Simcoe, so there's a lake cottage country vibe. There's a bit of a suburban vibe, and so what we did the municipality itself was very innovative. It used Uber as its transit system. It's building a brand new Jetsons-like city from scratch on a greenfield site, and other things like that. We also had decided strategically to become a startup ecosystem. So we went to build on our strengths, and in this case, and our senior management and our council wanted to accelerate the economy. So this was more of an internal staffing perspective. We branded our community as Innisfil Accelerates, which you could imagine is a bit of a departure from what was it isn't now, but what was a bit of a smaller, sleepier rural community. So we built on some assets that were there and that played on the fact that our community was progressive, was supportive. We have this incredible library as well. It's actually called the Idea Lab. That's one of the most innovative libraries in North America for a little town of 40,000 people. So our community had already embraced this idea that we were innovative, and we just played up on that. I'm Dan, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Dan. That's wonderful. Laura, did you want to contribute to the conversation?
Yeah, Dan made such a great point that when you look at branding your community, it's really important to start with your assets, and truly understand who you are as a community. One of the communities I worked in was a city called Annapolis, Maryland. And Annapolis, Maryland is this gorgeous historic maritime seaport. And to be anything other than this gorgeous maritime seaport would have been disingenuous. And so, from an economic development standpoint, we leaned into um, what the community was. Our logo looked like a maritime seaport. We made sure that when we talked about the community, we highlighted this incredible industry that really was the catalyst for the city. But it's really important as economic developers to not try to be something your community is not, and really focus on branding based on your assets. I'm Laura Fritz, and I'm done speaking.
That's a great point as well, Laura. Thank you. Lee and Jill, I know you both joined us on the stage, but it was before I threw out the question. Lee, did you want to contribute to the conversation? Well,
Good morning, afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in. Yeah, great. I love this conversation. And appreciate what Lara's saying about your the ones talking about your brand and your initiatives. It's almost like you're getting the best used car salesmen out there, selling what makes your community so great and so special. And I think, we've been able to do that successfully with our community, the one that I'm currently serving in Brownsville, Texas, because we really want the individual that gets serviced by our organization to be the ones that speak highly of the opportunities and resources that, in all honesty, have been made available for them. And that's what seems to be most impactful and seems to be working in regards to fortifying the brand, but also building this impeccable reputation that has allowed us to maneuver through a lot of political shifts that may be in the horizon or currently are present. It's a great strategy that, and I would have to say it's not my strategy. It's one that I've learned from mentors, but I'm gladly sharing it with everybody in the group.
And Josh, thank you so much for your kindness. Brownsville, Texas is where you work. Your last name is Mejia, and so thank you for your kindness and not pointing that out that I screwed it up. I'm Laura Fritz, and I'm
You're
done
you're
speaking.
good, Laura. You're good, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Laura. Lee, did you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I'm really appreciating this conversation, and Josh, hearing from you, and especially the point about, the fact that your brand really has to represent the DNA of your community. Otherwise, people aren't going to authentically connect with it or believe in it. And the people you need to believe in it aren't just your community leaders, but your general public and residents of the community as well, which sometimes is a challenge in economic development because we have multiple audiences for that brand message. And there's a certain margin that we have in terms of moving and transitioning that brand, which is, as we talked about earlier, requires a process. But understanding that you have your local audience, which has to be part of that brand, they are the DNA, your assets are the DNA of it. But you also have to make sure that that brand is part of that bigger marketing and promotion program that you have. As Dan was talking about earlier, it's important, I have learned, to ensure that it's part of a strong value proposition that starts to appeal to those different audiences, particularly when you're looking at that investment promotion piece and understanding who that target audience is and how your brand authentically connects with them or they connect with that brand. So creating the both of virtual and real-time business relationship between your brand and that external audience is another really important aspect of developing your value proposition in an effective way when you're doing that brand development. This is Lee, and I'm done.
Lee, thank you for those thoughts. Those are some really great points as well. Mark, I know you've just joined us on the stage. I wondered if you wanted to add to the topic before I reset the room.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, jump in. I kind of come from a different background. I mean, this whole notion of economic development is a bit of a new arena for me. I come more from specifically the retail side of things, but certainly branding is all part of that. And the one thing that I keep hearing, and I think Lee said it and Josh said it, and I've heard it throughout the discussion, is that notion of um, being authentic and the emotion that a brand creates, and how when you're building that brand, you're really building trust with people. Your brand is saying I care about things, and I think I don't know, it was Lee who touched on it earlier, but the notion of it can be polarizing. There are going to be members of a community who may not think that a certain icon or certain imagery or certain things are representative of a community. But I don't know that that's entirely a bad thing. I think there's always going to be a bit of polarization in good branding. But I think, as I say, just what I'm hearing here, these ideas of authenticity, trust, caring, they all contribute to that idea of good branding, and from that future growth for whether it's for communities, whether it's for the businesses within those communities, or wherever that may, whatever that ultimate goal is. So that's all I have to say at this point.
Thank you, Mark. Those are some really great insights as well. And I think, as we were talking earlier, hearing from those who work and create experiences in communities on our main streets are just as important as well. Really quick, it's 12:32. I did want to reset the room because we've had some new folks join us, which is always wonderful. And welcome to the EcDev Network for those of just who are new here to the talk. My name is Bob Minhas, and my co-hosts today are Dan Taylor and Laura Fritz. Today we are talking on the subject of branding around your community and really understanding how economic development professionals can really look towards sharing and giving some sort of best practices together. One of the things we do want to let you guys know is we are recording this session. Dan is amazing at repurposing this for a podcast later. If you haven't yet, all of the speakers that you see on stage are amazing thought leaders in what they do. So if you haven't yet, be sure to follow them, because as they enter other rooms, they'll be able to let you know when they're there, and you could continue to join in on other similar economic development discussions. If you think this topic is amazing and want to invite some of your colleagues, friends, or heck, even family, you can use the plus sign on the app below, and that will allow you to invite folks into the room. You'll also see a hand over notepad icon there. If those of you in the audience have a question or you just want to participate in the conversation, when you press that button, that'll allow myself, Dan, or Laura to invite you to the stage to contribute. Now, if we do that, just be sure when you jump on stage that you're aware your mic is immediately active. So you want to be sure that you put yourself on mute until we have a chance to bring you up in focus. Just for those of our friends on stage, if you have any, sorry, I've lost track. Some advice for those on stage. What we tend to notice is when you're speaking, if you just let us know you're done speaking and reshare your name again, that helps us ensure that the conversation keeps flowing. If you want to simulate or emulate clapping hands, just press the mic on and off, and that'll do it for you. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there. So here's what I'd love to do. Dan, I'm gonna ask a new question, but Dan, I'm gonna start right with you if you don't mind. So we've talked a lot around this idea of branding, authenticity, really understanding our assets, and really pulling things together. For the most part, really understanding our UVP, our unique value proposition, as a community. So here's my question to you then, I guess, as a consumer. How do we look at measuring the success of a brand? So I'd love to start with you, Dan. And what are KPIs that indicate if a brand is working or not for a community?
Sure, that's a really good question. So I'm going to talk soft first, and then hopefully while I'm chatting, I can think of some hard KPIs. If not, we'll get the conversation going. I want to build a bit on what most of the panel has been talking about, which is this. Rooted in, I struggle with the word authenticity. I think it's a bit overused, but realness, whatever the right term is. And so one of the things that we did in Prince Edward County is we identified it as a creative community. I did a little bit what I just criticized. Is I branded the area as Canada's first creative rural economy. But maybe more importantly, the work that we, and I did that because it was a creative economy. There was a lot of creatives, traditional artistic musician creatives, as well as digital creatives and digital media creatives. And I've mentioned this before. We started something called Creative Minds, which was a networking event. But really what we started doing was a movement to recognize the creativity in the community. And for me, one of the greatest KPIs, and I don't know exactly how you measure it, but in a small community, you can definitely measure it by feeling, is the community started using the term creative economy, creative rural economy, which is kind of a foreign term, especially 15 years ago. It's not like saying we're a manufacturing community or a tourism or agricultural community. So for me, one of the greatest KPIs is that. The other is those Creative Minds events went away because there was a void in economic development for a while. And then the community brought it back. Not unlike there was a Maple Syrup Festival that survived, destination marketing organization going bankrupt, COVID, the community, in that case the business, the maple syrup community brought it back. So to me, maybe more important than a KPI, hard one, is that things live on. However, I am thinking of some stats now, so I'm going to show off a little bit. When I got to Prince Edward County, tourism was about a $250,000 a year industry, and about the same amount in dollar amount. Today, and even though I haven't been there for a while, I set the foundation. The foundation kept rolling. Over 1 million people go there a year. The last stat I had, like 10 years ago, is the value of tourism had tripled and the spend per person had doubled. So those are real numbers. Building a brand new wine industry and gastronomic capital of Ontario, etc. Over the last 20 years, I'm estimating that that's added like $1 billion of value to that economy. So, I mean, there's some tangible KPIs for sure, and there's soft ones, and I think you have to look at both. One thing I do want to build on that, I like what Josh said, is so that when people started using the term creative economy, they became ambassadors, as did all the media, as did our visitors, as did our tweeters and our Facebookers and our Instagrammers. And so if you can create an army of ambassadors, you've done a good job on your branding because people are connecting to the brand and the brand is connecting to the people. I'm Dan and I am done speaking.
Really good thoughts there. That's a really great point. Lee, did you want to contribute to the conversation?
Yeah, love your stats, Dan. I think it's really important